In this discussion, we are going to talk about how we can get our work published. Warning: any discussion on such a topic has its limitations because the discussion is always constrained by his scope of knowledge and experience. And what is presented here is based on my own research experience since the late 1970s and early 1980s, when I struggled my best to get my first article published. My effort to get my first paper published was extremely difficult. During that time, I talked to professors, talked to peers, and read how-to books. And this process took me way over 3 years. Now, before we get started, let's imagine what is the background scenario here. We assume a person is new to the idea of getting research published. For example, he's in his PhD program. He needs to complete potentially publishable research. Or he has not done any publishable research in a while, and now he's back to do publishable research. In short, the situation is this. The person, we are the person, okay, do not have any research topic to work on. By this, we do not mean the person does not have any imagined problem or fantasies and what would be great if we can address those problems. What we mean is the person does not have a research topic he could actually address successfully and then get the consequent work published. Now, what is the difficulty here? The difficulty is this. The person is transitioning from a receiver of knowledge to a creator of knowledge. Now, as a receiver, for instance, we are a student. All we need to do here as a student is to learn and to receive, and then answer a few well-designed problems. Okay, here we just need to learn what has been learned earlier. Now, as a creator knowledge, which is totally different, because we have to discover new knowledge and we have to design appropriate case analyses. That is, we, in this case, move from being a learner of knowledge or passive receiver of knowledge to a seeker and inventor of knowledge. The latter case requires us to have strong abilities to imagine boundlessly and to think out of all boxes, and that part is difficult. Now, in this case, if we are in or facing such challenge, what should we do? We surely need to talk to those who publish regularly. We need to be humble here and learn why and how those colleagues who can publish. And we glance through some how-to books. And here, how-to books can be addressing not necessarily how to get published, maybe how to make money. Just imagine whoever writing those books, they need to generate sales. So how to make money is more selling, okay, more eye-catching to the public. And we also need to read a few recently published papers on topics that interest us. And then we try to formulate problems that are still not addressed by the papers. And then we see which problems we formulated we can actually solve and address. And we can produce, by addressing those problems, we can produce papers. Now let's look at talking to researchers. And generally, researchers would help us to point out to directions or problems which might not that interesting to us, or we cannot solve as beginners. Okay. And generally, unsettled problems researchers have been considering tend to be difficult for beginners. Even though the advantage here is this: these regular publishing people could quickly point us to some of the potential directions of thinking that will avoid us wasting a lot of time and struggling. Now, let's look at how-to books. These books tend to provide a very general and broad guidance without touching on what we need. So between these books and actually doing research and getting published, there is a huge gap that needs to be filled by using other means. And filling this gap could be very, very challenging. Even though these books still tend to show the fact that we are not the only ones who have trouble getting published. And this fact and this realization is very important to us, psychologically speaking. Now, what do we do next? After the previous two steps, they are relatively easy to do. We actually sit down and read a few recently published papers. And in real life, this part can be very, very difficult, because in our lives, there are many, many things which command our attention. And there are many urgent issues we need to address. So, forgetting everything in life and actually sit down calmly and concentrate on learning a few recently published papers can be very challenging. But anyhow, suppose we can do this. Okay, so what's the purpose? From reading the papers, we want to learn about what is newly established and see whether a mistake is made or there is a gap in the reasoning presented in the papers. And then we are going to discover what is established can be innovatively employed to solve practical or theoretical problems, or be generalized to cover more grounds, meaning that we can establish a more general theory to explain and to solve more problems. And then, most importantly, from the papers, we want to see, can we unify the established conclusions and results into an organic, bigger theory? Okay, so if we can reach this final stage, our paper will be published. Then what? If reading papers really lead to uncovering a mistake or a gap in reasoning, or discovering a new way to apply, or a way to unify what's established into a big theory, then we would have formulated our problems. After that, getting resultant papers published is quite straightforward and should not involve much trouble. All right, now let's look at the technical detail. How we should start a list of potential problems. Okay, now this idea can be very useful, because sorting through published results is very overwhelming. Why? Because first we need to understand what the results were telling us. And second, we need to know why they are true. And third, we need to connect all the results together in a way we can comprehend the overall landscape of the work. And then we need to see where there is a niche we can fail. So this overwhelming and challenging step basically can throw most beginners off track and finally force them to give up. So in order to stay on track, we should consider to start a notebook to list all formulated open problems which we could potentially address. And most of these problems will be too difficult to solve for us, or they are just simply ill formulated, meaning they are just not well formulated problem. They just don't mean much. And with the time, all the problems which are well formulated or even ill formulated for the time being will become more clear and easier to address. And in this case, previously we think some of the problems were ill formulated. They suddenly come into light and point to some bigger and major directions of research. Now, the problem in our research is always which problem is important among other problems we listed and why. Okay, so at this stage, we would most likely have no clue about the importance of the problems we formulated. And the focus here should be, of course, because we are very overwhelmed. So the focus here would be locating the problem we could actually solve, and then how the problem could be solved with the different methods, because the different methods here can give us different clues, and also introducing different methods also mean you open up a new territory of learning. And then we try to study what implications our solutions give us. And this part, to answer this part, we might very well address the importance of the problem we resolved. All right, to summarize what we did in this discussion, at this stage of getting research papers published, we get our problems of potential papers from reviewing the literature. And this step is a must, even though the process could be quite tedious and painful. And when we break through the frustration at this stage, we will find ourselves on a totally different ground and level with the joy and success. Okay, once again, we need to focus on the fact that this stage, breaking through this stage, is very, very difficult. Involves a lot of frustration. Okay, this wraps up our discussion today, and please direct your comments, questions to my email, and I love to hear from you, and I will address your comments and questions in the following videos. Thank you very much.